Looking for a new career? Welcome to Do HVAC Training Service Center in North Charleston. Enroll today in our comprehensive HVAC training hands-on field experience-based program, covering troubleshooting, maintenance, installation, and more on various HVAC systems and ductwork. We offer EPA and NAEP preparation and testing, along with various certifications. Enjoy payment options. Achieve certification in under 5 months. Enroll now for your new journey of skill development and career advancement. Log on to dewhvactrainingsc.com to inquire.
So, Michelle.
So, David.
Look, it's really busy in intelligence world right
There
now.
is so much going on. I got super excited.
There's spies being arrested.
I know.
There's stuff going on. So today I thought this is a really great opportunity to take a look at 3 separate stories that are going around the intelligence world, and also look at it in the vein of what it used to be like for me working for ASIO, when you do a sort of like situation report on what's going on in the world, and also a look at what a good operation looks like and what a bad operation looks like.
It's like we're getting back to basics. We're doing good old-fashioned spy work.
We're doing some real spy work. And look, the first story is an absolute Le Carre cracker.
It's a cracker. I was like, when I read this, it was in the New York Times, and when I read it, I was like, ooh, we have to unpack this.
And then you sent it to me, and I went, ooh. And then there's another one, a local story, which I'm really excited about. And then there's just, basically, it's a mess. It's a hot mess, the last one.
Well, let's just go get it undone and out.
Ladies and gentlemen, get ready for a situation report.
You're listening to I Spied, the good, the bad, the ugly of Australian intelligence.
Well, I've got a very, very good operation.
Amazing.
It's very nice. Very good. Yeah, this is a good one.
Yeah,
And look, I'm really sorry, but unfortunately I blew up my car on the way.
That's bad.
And
That's bad.
and no one will sleep with me.
Oh,
And
well, I get that. It's okay.
yeah, kiss. Okay.
Hello and welcome to I Spy. My name is Michelle Stevenson. I'm here with David Callan, and we're gonna get back to like what we kind of started with. Our like primary podcasting was
Spy
all
basics.
about spy basics.
Yeah.
And before we get started, because there are 3 things that we want to kind of tuck into, I want to ask if you've been watching The Diplomat.
No, I have not.
Okay, do yourself a favour, and I want the listeners to do themselves a favour. Watch The Diplomat. It is on Netflix. It is very good. Rufus Sewell, Kerry Russell, and if you're into spies and foreign policy and kind of everything we kind of talk about, this is the story for you.
You just said Rufus Sewell and I'm in.
I know.
Because after The Man in the High Castle, Rufus Sewell
He's so
was
good.
so good in that.
And it's interesting because off the back of this, it's made me do The Americans, because I actually never watched The Americans and everyone raved about it.
Guilty as charged.
I know. So I'm halfway through The Americans as well. So I'm totally on a whole like Kerry Russell spy genre.
I'm going to be totally honest with you. Right now, I'm rewatching The X-Files, and I'm kind of wishing I wasn't. Because you're like, back in the day, it was such an impactful and amazing show.
Also, David Duchovny, I like every girl was in love with him.
Yeah, but I don't get it. He's kind of a blank slate. But anyway, let's get down to business. Now, this is the story that you came up with. It's Ali Reza Akbari. Now, he was an Iranian political hawk. This guy was like full on. He was a major zealot, deputy defense minister, member of the Supreme National Security Council of Iran. I mean, this guy was what you would call the archetypal Iranian zealot. He was just full on Iran. He was openly declaring that Iran should have nuclear weapons.
Yes.
This guy was right in amongst it.
So then how did he become a spy for the British?
Exactly. Unfortunately, on January 11th this year, he was put to death by hanging at the neck by the Iranian government. Now, he started out, there was a great interview, part of that article you mentioned. They talked to his brother, and he and his brother went and joined the army during the Iranian Revolution and then during the war with Iraq. And when they got back, he was so impressive with his work on the battlefield that he wound up being a commander of the Iranian Republican Guard Corps, which is a big gig. And that's a real sort of hardcore, hardliners like career path. After that, he just started descending the political ranks.
Yeah, and what was interesting about this story too, because I kind of got really confusing for me, because it started with how in 2008 a senior British intelligence official flew to Tel Aviv to deliver an explosive revelation to his Israeli counterparts that Britain had a mole in Iran with high-level access to the country's nuclear and defense
programs. Yeah.
So I was like, in my head, I'm like, why was he saying that to his Israeli? It was like very convoluted and confusing.
Well, here's the thing, all right, and this reflects on the next story we'll talk about, which is the local story, is intelligence services that work as allies, so allied intelligence services in Australia, America, Canada, Britain, New Zealand. You've got the Five Eyes, you've got the Quad.
Yeah.
We will share intelligence and we'll do intelligence work for each other.
But will you share moles? Like, I would imagine that you wouldn't do that.
Well, you wouldn't share moles, but the first thing, Israel, when you turn around and say, look, we found this thing and it's called Fordo, and it's the Iranian nuclear facility just outside Tehran, the first thing Israel is going to do is go,
where'd you get that information?
Where'd you find that out from? And it's like, I was reading the paper. It's like,
Google Maps.
Yeah, Google Maps.
I zoomed in.
Yeah, just couldn't believe it. There it was. Yeah. I was looking up Frodo and I got it wrong and boom, it came up. Right, no, the whole thing is you do need to, in some way, satisfy the credibility of your source. So they would have said, look, we've got someone inside.
Yeah.
Now, they wouldn't have gone any further than that. That would have been the limit of it. They would have said, we've got someone in Iranian defense. They're very close to the nuclear program. And he was actually the 2IC to one of the main guys in the program.
And the information that he was giving was quite like high level stuff.
It was the stuff that basically meant the West would sanction Iran because of their nuclear program to try and bring it down. Now, the interesting thing about it was he wasn't in government all that long. He left government somewhere around where was it? 2012, he went to England and he was made an English citizen, right? But he had all these business interests overseas, one in Austria, one here, one there, all this stuff going on in Europe. At one point, his brother actually turned around and said, we should probably run an oil company, to which Al-Reza just turned around and said, look, sorry, already got something going on in Austria. And I'm focused on that.
So apparently he had all these kind of like front kind of businesses happening so he could make excuses to go and do drop-offs and meetups.
He had reasons to go and see his handlers, right? So that was the big thing. Now, but even though he was working in Europe and living in England, he still was very well regarded within the Iranian government. So they were still talking to him. He was still advising them on things they should do. So he was built, his reputation within the government hadn't been slighted by the fact that he wasn't a member of the government anymore. And that, again, that's a beautiful piece of cover you've got there, is this guy he's the perfect spy in that he's the spy that no one would believe is a spy.
Yeah, I mean, this was a guy that also, he was so religious that he had that kind of dent on the forehead that they get from like praying to the clay stone.
The clay stone. He'd prayed so hard he dented himself doing it. Right, so this is a guy who's obviously very, very devout and very, very patriotic. So why? This is the big question everyone says. Now,
his family, though, say that he didn't do it.
He didn't do it, right? But the problem is when they look at the timing, there's a lot of information that came out of the interviews. By the way, he was interviewed for 3 or 4 years. And when you say interviewed, he was in Evin prison, which is one of the worst places you can find yourself in Iran. If you're in there and they're interviewing you, it's not going to be comfortable.
Yeah, because he believes his family believes he was coerced.
He was totally coerced. He had released, I think it was 4 videos confessing all of his crimes, all of his espionage. And the whole thing was, there is no real tangible reason for him to doing it. What's the motivation?
Yeah, it's because they were saying money was a motivation,
and power.
But then he was fine. He didn't need money. He didn't need the power. So it's kind of like all the reasonings they were given.
He was paid something like £2.5 million by the Brits for his services.
Apparently.
Allegedly. Well, according to the Iranians, he was, and he was executed. That's the thing. He was walked out of his cell, walked into a courtyard, a rope was around his neck, and he hung from the gibbet.
Yeah, because they, in addition to accusing him of revealing their nuclear and military secrets, they've also said he disclosed the identity and activities of over 100 officials. Now,
including
the chief nuclear scientist,
Mohsen Fiqhzadeh, who was the guy that the
Israelis assassinated.
The Israelis assassinated with a robot.
Yeah, with a robot.
It was a robot. It was essentially a drone. It was an independent firing machine gun. Well, basically it was a 30 millimeter cannon that basically it destroyed his vehicle and him inside it. So the whole thing was, I mean, there you go. The Iranians knew about this and they were able to plan. Now, funnily enough, this happened in 2020. That assassination took place in 2020. Ali Raisi was already, Akbari had already been arrested.
Yeah, because a lot of they said a lot of this information, I believe, that he was releasing was like 2008.
Yeah, well, that was
earlier.
And he'd originally been accused of espionage in 2008.
So if he had given the identity of this scientist, surely 2020 is a real long time to wait to assassinate someone.
Timing.
Right.
It's all, and look, that's one of the things you've got to understand about the Israelis is they are patient. They will wait. I mean,
they hold a grudge.
If you've ever watched Munich, there's that thing where they went, okay, we're going to go and we're going to kill every one of these Palestinians that were involved in the Munich Olympics, right? So, but the whole thing was, it takes a lot of time. To set something like that up and to get it absolutely right, to know that it's going to be a clean kill, everything's fine, and they don't care if they wind up being named for it. It's quite obvious who's doing it.
So is it just possible that he was a scapegoat, that someone else kind of had released this information and had set him up?
Now, that's a really interesting point, right? Is there someone else in the Iranian government that would have turned around and gone, hang on, they're getting close to me. How about I point them that way?
Because if there's one thing I've learned from watching spy drama, this is possible.
It's never the person you think it is. No. Here's the thing that's really important is during the interviews, a lot of the dates and times and situations that he confessed to all do match up.
Yes, they
do.
They
all line up pretty well, right? That's point number one. Point number two, the British went, how dare you say that? We never did that at all, which is pretty much a confession that they did. They've condemned it, the whole ball of wax. The interesting thing, and I think the thing that really sticks out for me is the Israeli part of it.
Yeah,
right? The fact that they found out about someone like Fakhrizadeh, the nuclear scientist.
Yes, and waited so long to.
That's a hard one to. That's a really, really hard one to square, right? And particularly because he worked so closely with him.
Yeah.
He'd know the kind of information like how he travels, where he travels, when he travels, all that sort of stuff is going to come out, right? And interestingly enough, the fact that it happened post his arrest may lend the fact that, well, how did they know though he was going to be then at that location then? But that might have just been, we know who we got to look for. Let's get eyes on the asset and work out his schedule, and then we can break it down from that. So I personally think by the way it sounds, the fact that he was such a hardcore zealot is no reason for him not to do it.
Yeah, but I do think he was an unlikely spy, and that's what a lot of people are saying. He had fanatical allegiance as well to the ideals.
But he might be fanatically welded to the Islamic State, but that doesn't mean he's happy with the way the Islamic State is being run.
Yeah, I understand that, but usually the fanatics are pretty hard to flip, I would imagine. Like to kind of go against your country.
Not exactly. Right. No? That's a really interesting point. People go, the fanatics are the hardest ones to crack. Not necessarily, because they are so fanatical. It's very easy to flip them to be fanatical in a different direction, right? It's one of those.
If you coerce them into believing that what they're doing is for the greater good.
Exactly. Yeah. Remember, money, ideology, compromise, ego. This would in this recruiting case, and he was recruited through the British Embassy, I believe. Yeah. Right. He went to a function at the British Embassy, and very quickly he's suddenly handing secrets over. Right now, again. We're never going to know, or you know what, we will know in about 30 years how this came about. But if you look at something like that, if they can appeal to the ideology in the right way, and I've got to be honest with you, British human handlers are exceptionally good at their job.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Right? So someone very persuasive is going to turn around and basically say, look, we understand. We totally support the fact. But the reason the world has a problem with the Islamic State is the Islamic State's being run by idiots. And you're the right sort of person to do it. So ego is going to be promoted,
of course.
And the ideology. We have no problems with your ideology. We have problems with the way people are undermining your ideology, and that's how you flip, right? People that are that passionate about things aren't rational, so you can literally switch the rationalization around and that way recruit them.
Yep.
Right. So to me, this is like a really, really. It's a terrible end to a le Carré novel.
Yeah, even they said when he was arrested, originally he was held for 4 months on accusations that he was spying for Britain. Apparently the interrogations didn't yield a confession at that point.
No.
And then he was released on bail.
Yeah. So, well, but the also thing is he was arrested in 2008 and then the case was just closed.
Yeah.
Right. And that might have been because everyone went, are you kidding? He's got a dent in his forehead, guys. He's one of the dented forehead people.
Yeah.
Come on, he can't be a spy. And because of that, a lot of there's probably some poor bloody intelligence officer in the Ministry of Intelligence of Iran going, why won't anyone listen to me? I know this guy is, doing the dirty. We've got to grab him. But everyone else is going, shut up, sit down. You don't know what you're talking about, son.
But my thing is, if he did do this, he had all these accusations, he was released. And then in 2019, he flew to Iran for a final time after apparently he was told that the country needed him on an urgent nuclear defense matter.
Yes.
Why, if he had done these things, surely he would go, they're onto me, I'm never going back to Iran.
But again,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally mean it. But here's a really important thing. Mate, there's some stuff going on with the nuclear program. We really need your advice on it.
Yeah.
I'm a spy or I'm an agent within a government and my government has turned around and said...
But he's already been arrested previously and questioned about being a spy.
And released, case closed.
I know, but also wouldn't you just go, maybe they're onto me?
But this may be information that I really need to get to my handler.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
I don't know.
So that's the big thing.
I just wouldn't go back to Iran.
You dangle a carrot. Right. I understand totally. 2020 hindsight is the most powerful tool that we all have.
I know, but I wouldn't do it.
If you dangle that carrot saying, mate, there's this big thing going on in the nuclear program, can you get back so we can get your advice on it? He's going to go, geez, I want to get back and get that piece of information, get back to London. And then he walks in there and the handcuffs go on and he's chucked into Evin prison and basically he's counting the days down. Yeah. Right. So this is the problem is there is, again, and this comes back, let's leap back to our artificial intelligence episode and how artificial intelligence could replace spies. They can't, simply because people think very differently. We're not rational. We're not linear. We don't think in a way that's normal. Well,
no, you're not rational.
Well, I'm completely rational. Everything makes sense.
Nothing you say or do makes sense.
When? Right.
Okay, so look, this is a really good article, and we should put it up.
We'll put it up on the. We'll definitely put it up. But the most interesting thing about this is an operation that ran for, let's see, 2004. I think he started sharing secrets. Yeah. Right. So 2004. That's to 2019. 15 years. This guy was sharing secrets. That's a bloody strong and very successful operation. Yes. It ended badly for the asset. Yes. But you know what? That's the price you pay.
Okay, so let's move on. We'll go to was there something else you had to say?
No. You're absolutely right. It's time to move on because we've got another carrot being dangled here to bring us into the next story. Now, let's talk about an ex-US Marine naval pilot called Daniel Duggan.
I love Daniel Duggan.
Daniel Duggan.
DD.
Yeah. Father of 6.
Oh.
And lives in Australia.
Yep.
Yes, he did. Right. Now, Daniel Duggan was a Marine pilot. And now Marine pilots, fighter pilots, are really good at landing and taking off from
ships.
Aircraft carriers.
Yeah,
right?
which is really quite a skill.
It is. And such a skill that if you teach other people how to do it, that could be regarded as arms dealing.
Yeah, and we have, we've recently cracked down on this.
Yeah, we have. We don't want people teaching other people, particularly people that could be enemies, even though they keep buying our buildy dirt.
Particularly when the Chinese say, hey, we've got a really great job offer. We'll pay you all of this money just to teach us how to do this.
Aha, but they didn't. A guy in South Africa went, I've got a really good job for you teaching these blokes how to land and take off from aircraft carriers. And Duggan went, well, hell, I'd like to try that. Yeah. Right. And got paid an extraordinary amount of money to teach these guys that looked extremely Chinese how to take off and land from aircraft carriers.
It's kind of like, it's like, when you send your money offshore. That's what they were doing.
So let's send our pilots offshore to learn how to fly offshore. Right.
And into buildings. No, not into buildings.
So the whole thing was he went and did all of this stuff. Now, he's been working in China. He wound up working in China in an unrelated position. He wasn't teaching people to fly over there. He actually had a business in Australia for a while that he sold so he could go and work in China.
To make shit tons of cash and training their pilots how to do stuff?
No, not in China. He wasn't doing that in China.
No, he wasn't doing that in China. But
he was working for a charter airline or something. I'm not sure. But anyway, Daniel Duggan gets a phone call from Australia and he's told, if you come back to Australia, ASIO are going to give you a security clearance and you can work in defence. And he went, hell yeah, I want to do that. There's even more money in defence. Comes back to Australia. Suddenly there is no security clearance. Oh. And then the AFP and ASIO show up at his house in Orange, rural New South Wales.
Interesting that he was living in Orange.
And arrested him last October.
Yeah.
For arms dealing.
Yeah.
Right. Now, the whole thing about this is he's got to be extra. We weren't arresting him for us. We were arresting him on behalf of the United States government.
Yes, because he's US.
He's a US citizen.
Yeah.
And he's breached the US law. Well, he's kind of breached an international law.
And the Americans don't like that stuff.
Well, they don't. And they certainly do want to discourage any other pilots that might think, hey, I can make a cheap buck going down to South Africa to teach the Chinese how to fly.
Well, and what this did as well is it kind of sparked a whole conversation in Australia with ASIO about, very similar stuff. And we had to make it very clear that we will not tolerate any of our ex-defence personnel training anyone else
to do things that they might then use against us in a fit of aggression.
Yes.
Now, here's the big problem with that. America does this all the time. America will contact people and
America is like, do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, very much like Akbari. Can you please come back to Iran? We really need to talk to you, right? And suddenly you're arrested. With Duggan, you want to come back to Australia? We'll give you a security clearance. You can work for defence.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, that's great. That's called a lure.
Yeah.
Now, in Australia, we're not allowed to do that. In America, they do it all the time.
Yeah.
And it's not regarded as illegal. In Australia, it is illegal. We're not allowed to do that.
Not allowed to do a lure?
No, we're not allowed to lure you back. The other thing that's a real problem is a lot of people, in fact, Duggan's lawyers are basically saying that this is a political witch hunt. They're basically saying that Duggan is being accused of a crime because of the political situation between China and America.
Right.
Right. He was just doing a job, man. His lawyers, come on. He was just doing a job. He loves to fly and teach other people how to do it. Who cares who it was? Well, the American government care because at the moment this is a potential military adversary.
Yeah.
Right. Now, because of that, in Australia, by the law, we cannot extradite someone to another nation if the crime is politically based.
Right.
Right. So if you're being accused, it'd be like if Trump came to Australia because he'd been regarded as, for whatever crimes he's done, he's come to Australia to hide. Why do that? God, please don't do that.
He could not hide here.
He could not hide here.
We don't have rocks big enough.
Everyone would just go, that tan is bullshit, mate. Right. So basically, if America went, if the Democratic Party or the Democratic government went, we want to arrest him, Australia would be obliged to go, look, we can't actually send him back because it's political.
Yeah.
And this is what the argument that Duggan's lawyers are making. They're basically saying that this is a political crime he's being accused of, therefore we can't extradite. And on top of that, he was lured to Australia under false pretenses. That again makes the arrest null and void.
Yep.
And he should be released.
Yep.
Now, here's the really terrible thing is he was arrested in October. He's been in maximum security solitary since then. Wow. That's a really, really hard row to hoe.
Yeah.
Right? That would be a very unpleasant way. It makes it very difficult for his lawyers to talk to him. Makes it very difficult for him to talk to anybody.
And he's got 6 poor children.
6 kids. Right?
And quite honestly, he probably did it like most ex kind of defense force. He probably did it for the money. He wasn't even thinking about like who he was training or why he was training them. It was like, okay, they're going to pay me some money.
I can't go to the motivations of why he did it, but yes, they're going to pay me a shit ton of cash. Will generally bring a lot of people to the table. Now,
well, because my dad, after he left the Air Force, he went and worked overseas. He worked for British Aerospace in Spain, but he also worked in Saudi Arabia for years and Dubai.
Yep. Well, the Saudis are still our friends.
Yeah. I know, but it's like what I guess what I'm saying
where do you draw the line?
Yeah, exactly.
The line that the Americans are drawing is you can't teach Chinese how to do this because they're currently our enemy. even though they're not, and even though we still trade with them.
That's the point, right?
It's this really messy, muddy thing that's going on about China's surging at the moment. Their resurgence, I don't want to say resurgence because it's not that they've ever been in this position globally ever before. They've got this real groundswell going behind them. They're beginning to take a position. I mean, the fact that they're trying to negotiate a peace deal between the Ukraine and Russia, because they're trying to negotiate a deal between Ukraine and Russia, that isn't them trying to control anything.
Yeah.
That's them trying to create a presence on the global stage,
Yeah.
right? The way America used to. But unfortunately, America's kind of tied into Ukraine and they can't negotiate the peace deal in good faith because they're not a third neutral party.
Yes.
China is. China has not traded with any weaponry. They haven't sold it. To this point, they haven't sent any arms into Russia. Therefore, they can stand as a neutral party. And they have approached both Zelensky and they approached Putin. They've met with both of them and said, we need to talk about this, which makes perfect sense, right? America don't want to lose their hegemony. They don't want to lose their primacy on the global stage.
No.
But China is in a real position to do that, right? And also they've had this incredible military buildup. Like the speed at which they've built stuff. We can't build a sub in our country in 20 years. They're building 2 a year.
Yeah.
Right? They've already outstripped the US Navy, like for ships. Whether they're as good, whether they're going to be
and then there's
competitive.
But also the economy is in a fragile state over in China.
Everyone's economy is in a fragile state.
But theirs is a little bit more fragile than others. It's propped up. Look, I think some things are really going to shift over the next 20 years when it comes to China, and we're going to get like some real answers into where they sit economically and how much power and persuasion they actually do have.
I think it's going to be a lot closer than 20. I reckon within the next decade, this is going to sort itself out. I don't believe that we're going to drop into a war in 3 years. And if we do, it's, tough for us because we don't have the kit to fight it.
Yeah. So anyway, there's Duggan. We've kind of really unpacked that.
Yeah, we've unpacked that. For me, with the Duggan case, this is one to watch, right? And I think he's in court again. Again, this is another thing that his lawyers are complaining about is he's stuck in solitary confinement in a maximum security prison. Yeah. I think it's either... Someone said Lithgow, but I've also heard Silverwater, probably Lithgow if he's max. But the other thing about this is he's going to be stuck there until his court case. And I don't think his court case is until late July, the next hearing. This is rough. This is really hard for him. Now, personally, I think dumb mistake.
Yeah.
You know, you got there and they went, oh, by the way, they're Chinese, they're PLA pilots. It's like, dude, I can't do this.
Yeah.
Right? But, you know, when there's this big bag of money sitting there.
Yeah, and you kind of wouldn't be like, you know, is it bad? Like, I don't know. You'd kind of like,
it's not like I taught them how to do it well.
Yeah. I taught them how to fail at it.
I taught them how to do it, but they're not very good at it, don't they?
So speaking of failing.
Right. Okay,
like,
now this is my favourite one,
one,
and it brings us back to Ukraine and Russia and everything that's going on there. The drone strike on the Kremlin.
I know. And like they're like, he's okay. Vladimir Putin is okay.
He wasn't even there.
No one knows where we don't even know if Vladimir Putin is alive. There's he has so many body doubles. It's like Weekend at Bernie's over there.
Yeah, well, they basically drag around a dummy that just has a sort of wearing a judo suit.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, I really like this because as soon as it happened, you know, Moscow was like, oh, it was an act of terrorism and we are now within our rights to perform acts of terrorism against Ukraine. No, wait. And then, of course, Ukraine went, I think it was one of the generals turned around and went, well, militarily, it's a stupid idea.
Yeah.
Why would we do it?
Yeah.
It's bad use of resources. It's unlikely to succeed. And top of it, it does nothing.
And no one believed them. The United States didn't believe them. Like, no one believed them.
No one believed them. Now, here's the thing. Of course, as soon as the Americans went, this is kind of ridiculous, right? That's when the Russians went, well, obviously, you did it. It was you. America, you dirty, dirty dogs. You have been sending your drones. Now, here's the thing about this. A couple of things. One, getting a drone into Moscow clandestinely is really complicated. Yeah. Right. And we're not talking, a Predator drone's not going to get there, right? A Predator drone would probably be shot down somewhere around the border. If not, there's something seriously wrong with the air defense in Russia, right? Now, there's that. One, getting 2 drones in there and getting 2 operating teams with them, that's hard. That's really, really complicated. Two, if you're going to attack the Kremlin with 2 drones to take out the head of government of the Russian people, you're going to know that he's there, all right?
Yeah.
You are going to make sure
You're not just
he's
going to
in the room.
willy-nilly send over a drone on the off chance that Putin might be there.
Hey, Volodymyr, you want to throw something at Vladimir? Let's do it, right? No, it doesn't work like that. And also, to do something like this, particularly when your city is being nightly either struck by missiles or, strafed by or bombed by planes. Actually, they're not bombing with planes. They don't have air superiority. But if your capital city is being struck nightly, a lot of people would go, well, a couple of drones into the Kremlin. Well, not even into the Kremlin. They were shot down before they got there. Payback's a fair deal. But here's the thing. It does nothing for the Ukraine.
No.
Because it immediately, it will start stirring up resentment in Russia.
And also they don't want to give them any ammunition, so to speak, or reasoning for firing on them.
Nobody wants to give anyone any ammunition because they all want to sell it because everyone wants ammunition at the moment. The interesting thing about this was it really reeks as a false flag.
Yeah.
It stinks of a false flag and a really badly carried out false flag.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of people have been saying regularly, or quite a lot after this incident occurred, was this is essentially a green light for the Russians to go, right, let's just drop this into terrorism.
Yeah.
Let's ignore the rules of war. Let's, ignore the laws of engagement and let's just go hell for leather.
Yeah.
Because we've got the big spring offensive. Everyone's waiting for the big spring offensive to start. You've got the spring offensive and then you're going to have the counteroffensive from the Ukrainians. It's going to get really grisly.
Yeah.
And the Russians need an excuse to up the ante. And I think for me, the whole Kremlin idea is that sending 2 drones in, means nothing to the Russians to waste 2 drones. It means nothing to waste 2 drones. They're very cheap, the ones that they're using these days. A, you've got control of the situation. B, the boss isn't in, so it's not going to hurt him. The visual looks great. We can now beat our chest and scream at America. America will stand there going, whoa, what did I do?
Yeah.
Right? And the Ukrainians will be sitting there going, oh, Christ, now what do we have to deal with? So essentially for me, this is like we had – when you look at Akbari and the MI6 would have been running him, that's an incredible operation. When you look at Duggan, I'm going to call this one the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
Right? The good, Akbari operation. The bad, the Duggan operation, because it's got legal holes all through it. And the ugly is this, because this is just a nasty little false flag
100%.
To justify added brutality in what is already an
and we see
awful
right
conflict.
Through it.
Yeah,
we see right
we
through
do.
it.
Nice try, Vlad, but look, go back to the drawing board and maybe just stop killing people.
Yeah, or that's if you're still alive or even still exist.
Well, look, at the moment, who knows? The other thing about this, and I think it's a really important point to remember with this Kremlin drone strike, is the Kremlin's leaking like a sieve at the moment.
They would know where he actually is.
They would, the intelligence, I would be very surprised if Western intelligence don't know where he is on a daily basis. Yeah. And also on top of that, I think they would know enough not to try something this foolish. Now, the Russian intelligence services are going through a lot of problems at the moment. Their assets in Europe are being absolutely kicked around.
Yeah, 100%.
But as we said before we started recording when we were talking about this, at the moment, the entire intelligence world is in a state of flux. Spies are coming out of the woodwork and popping up on Discord and Twitter and wherever. I think over the next few months, there's going to be a lot of activity in the intelligence world as everything people are going to have to start settling and realizing it's going back to basics for their intelligence services, back to basics for their operations, and really just working out where the information is and where it can flow to.
Let's just get it back to basics.
Please.